Morven Park. My name is Alicia and I am an educator with the Morven Park Center for Civic Impact. Today we are going to talk about the woodland ecosystem, and we are going to do that by becoming woodland explorers. This lesson is great for kindergartners through third graders. In order to be a good explorer, we have to use our eyes and look around and observe our surroundings. That's why I have these binoculars today, because there might be some things I would like to investigate that are a little bit further away, and these will help me look closely without getting too close and disturbing the animals that are in the woodland ecosystem. That brings me to my second point. We don't want to disrupt the life that is happening here in the woodlands. So if you see some really interesting creatures running around, you want to keep your distance and look from afar. Throughout this video, I might ask you some questions. When I ask a question, I want you to pause the video and discuss it with your family and talk about what you think the answer will be. Then you can press play and I'll give you the answer and you can see if you're right. We are going to talk about the woodland habitats. What is a habitat? Please pause here and discuss. A habitat is a home for an animal. And typically what you find in your home are all the things that you need to survive, like food, water, shelter, air, and space to move around and grow. In the woodland habitats, we find all of these things for many different creatures and animals and plants. The first living thing that we'll be talking about that you find in the woodland habitat are trees. So take a look at my tree life cycle page here, and you can see that the tree's life cycle all starts down here with a seed. That seed will fall into the soil, and then when it rains, it'll get water and it gets sunlight, and then it'll start to grow and it'll turn into the next stage, which is called a sapling. A sapling you could consider a baby tree. It's really small and it'll start growing leaves on it. Next, it'll turn into a much larger tree, like the trees you see in the woodlands here at Morven Park. They grow to be really tall, they have really big trunks, and then eventually they start to produce more seeds. Some trees only make seeds after they're 25 years old. So it takes a really long time for the trees to produce seeds where they then drop them into the soil. Now, trees don't last forever. They die like other living things, and they become snags. A snag is a tree that is dead, but it is still standing in the woodlands. And then, after a snag, it will fall down and become a log. The log will then be decomposed, and decompose means it breaks down over time. And the way it does this is through weather. So if it rains, it'll help break down the materials that the log is made out of. But also animals play a big part, like insects and bugs, and even birds like woodpeckers will go in and look for insects to eat and help break down that log until eventually it becomes soil. And you can see that the soil is essential. It is necessary for the first stage of the tree's life cycle. That seed needs soil to grow into a sapling. So you can see it is a circle because it keeps happening over and over and over again in the woodlands. Now let's talk about seeds. Seeds can be found all over the ground of the woodlands. Like these seeds here. You can see that these have fallen from the trees. Now, when we find seeds like this in the woodlands, we might think they're really nice and we want to take them home with us. But we want to leave them right where they are, because seeds, we know, When they're dropped into the soil, and if they get water and sunlight, they'll eventually become trees. So we want to leave them where they are. Now, seeds can be really important for many of the creatures in the woodlands. It can be a food source for some animals. Please discuss with your family what animals you think eat these seeds. If you said squirrels and chipmunks, you are right. They go all through the trees looking for seeds, and in the wintertime, they will hide seeds so that they know where to find them and that they will have food throughout the cold winter. In the early springtime, it's really difficult to find saplings or baby trees in the woodlands because not everything is growing yet. So when you're looking for saplings in the woodlands, they might look something like this. This is actually a bush, but you can see that it's much shorter than a regular tree. It's going to have really obvious branches, these stems that are attached to the ground, and it's going to have some leaves on it. But right now, in the early springtime, we're having a hard time finding some saplings, but this is just a good example of what to look for later on. In the woodlands, you'll find a lot of adult trees. One way you can tell is the trunk. It's going to be a lot rounder, a lot bigger than some of those smaller trees like saplings. They're also really tall. So if you look up and you see branches, those are most likely adult trees. This tree is definitely going to be producing seeds and leaves very soon since it's the springtime. Trees don't live forever, and some things kill trees like fungus, or it could get struck by lightning and die, but not all dead trees fall right away. Sometimes they're still standing, and that's called a snag. Right here you can see a snag. It doesn't have any new branches growing from it. This is early springtime, so most of the trees in the woodlands, they don't have leaves yet. But if it were summer and all the other trees had leaves, this one would not have a single leaf growing from it. We can also see some other things and observe some other things that tell us that this tree is dead. So I'm going to zoom in really close to this tree, and I want you to discuss with your family what are some signs that this tree is not living anymore. All right, some of you might say that these holes in the tree are signs that it's not living anymore. That's correct, because we know there are some insects that are living in there and breaking down that tree. We might even say that some of the birds, like woodpeckers, will come in here looking for insects to eat, and they will help break down this tree even more. So you're right, this is some really good evidence that this snag is not living anymore. Dead trees can't stand forever. So eventually, as they are being decomposed by insects and birds in the woodlands, they will fall down. So here you can see we have a fallen tree. Here is the stump where it was originally connected in the soil with all the roots holding on. And here is the rest of the tree that fell down. So some of you might think that it's a good idea that we remove these trees from the woodlands. But remember, as they keep breaking down, they'll decompose more and more and become soil, which is very important for all those seeds that are being dropped in the woodlands. This log is decomposing more than that fallen tree we took a look at. If you look closely at this log, you can see that it's breaking down. Pieces are falling from this log. That's because those insects are busy working to decompose this log so that it will become soil and will help bring all those new trees to life. Just like animals, trees need things to survive in this woodland habitat. So please take a moment and pause the video to discuss with your family what you think those needs are. Now that you had a chance to talk about it, you were right if you said food, water, air, shelter, and space to grow. And there's plenty of space out here in the woodlands for all these trees to grow. So thank you for joining us today and being woodland explorers. You can review what we did today on our hike with this worksheet, where you will identify the different stages of the tree's life cycle and then color in the pictures. Please tune in again next week for part 2 of Woodland Explorers. Thanks for joining in.